Tuesday.
Okay, 4:28, 5 to 6. Thanks. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education. It's Friday, April 16th at 1:19 p.m. We are going to start our work today by hearing from the State Board of Education, or on the State Board of Education and from the Agency of Education. Senators will recall that we asked Secretary French and Mr. Carroll to have a conversation. There have been some requests around some language changes that the State Board is requesting. And we thought good for the agency and the State Board to have a conversation and then come back to us today with their agreements to see if we might move some language forward this year. We would likely attach any possible language changes to what is also likely to go back to the House in their H101, which would also be the work that we worked on yesterday, diversifying the State Board, as well as a few other things that I'm considering sending back to them. We'll then hear the appropriations request from the state colleges, and that really will largely complete our work for the day. I do want to recognize and thank everybody for your work on S114 yesterday afternoon. I think we're in a good place with regard to the Senate's position. The House is aware of the Senate's position, and the bill is in their hands, if you will, and we will see what they end up sending back. And as is always the case, we have other options, other vehicles, other things that we can do to hopefully get to a good place. So with that, Secretary French, Mr. Carroll, thanks for joining us today. If you don't mind, I think we'll start with Mr. Carroll. If you want to reframe for us what you came in to talk to us about early on, and we became sidetracked with other work around some of the requests for the State Board, and then we'd like to hear from you and Secretary French on where you're at this point. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm John Carroll, Chair of the State Board. Secretary French and I did indeed have a good conversation at your direction and request, and reached a easy consensus on some fundamental language that addresses what some of us believe is a longstanding need to clarify the limits of the State Board's authority. You've heard from me before about this, and I know some of you share this concern that in the past, language in statute had been able to be used as a justification for the State Board, frankly, exceeding its authorities and presuming to take upon itself almost a kind of legislative authority. It was a simple matter of some pieces of language that had come to be back in 2012, back when there was such a kind of a tectonic shift in the relationship between the State Board and the Agency of Education. And so in some ways, this is simply corrective language that is really fundamental to clarifying and frankly limiting the authority of the State Board to make it very, very, very clear that any rulemaking by the State Board must be within the bounds of legislative intent and language. You would think that would be self-evident, but the language had been had sort of crept in that obscured that clarity. The language that Secretary French and I have concurred on is taken from the legislation, the bill drafted by Senate Education last year, which was a much more comprehensive piece of legislation. It was 58 pages, and it had several very ambitious goals, all of which I think the Secretary and I still support in principle. largely goals to clarify the roles of the board, to shift board administrative duties from the board to the agency where they more appropriately belong, and to allocate responsibility for rulemaking. Those latter parts are still in discussion, but there's clear consensus between the agency and the board that this original core language limiting the authority of the state board to rulemaking only that complies with or is within the ambit of legislation by the General Assembly. And so that's what is before you. You mentioned, Senator Campion, that it may go by way of S101. And of course, there had been talk about its being made part of H122, the boards and commissions bill. But frankly, we are agnostic about what vehicle is employed for adopting these changes. And I'm just delighted that Secretary French and I really see eye to eye on these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I believe, but I may be wrong, things are moving quickly. I believe H122 is indeed in the House still. I don't think they've sent that to us yet. And what they have sent to us, though, is H101, their literacy bill, which I plan to do a strike all of, which was the plan all along since the House incorporated some of their H101 into S114. And we plan on sending a few things back to them, if you will, this being one of them. So appreciate the two of you getting to a spot this year. And I suspect that there will be further conversations going forward so that some additional work might be addressed next January. But in the meantime, it looks like we have a direction forward. Secretary French, if you would.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan French, Secretary of Education. I don't have much more to add to Chair Carroll's remarks other than to say I think, it was fairly easy for us to come together on this. Drawing that line around what is foundational or fundamental, I think is the word John used, and I would agree. There's still, quite a bit of work to do, but to have this foundational or fundamental language established would be useful to direct that work, and it does sort of get at some of the tensions that, from my view, remain unresolved as a result of Act 98, 2012. So again, happy to provide that language. Hopefully you find it useful to your work, but it was fairly easy for us to come together on this.
Great. We will likely have Mr. Desmarais sort of take us through your language next. But in the meantime, any questions for Mr. Carroll or Secretary French?
So
Senator Lyons, please.
I'm looking at the memo that came from Mr. Carroll and Secretary French, and is that the proposal that we're okay? Yep. All right. Yeah, it looks pretty. I'm not using that word. It doesn't have as much complexity as it did earlier.
Yes, praise the Lord.
Other questions? Secretary French and Mr. Carroll, anybody else that you think we should hear from on this? This seems like an agreement between the agency and the state board. Anybody else that comes to mind that might have a conflict or concern? Secretary French?
I don't think so. I think, again, this fundamental sort of logic, I think, was always perhaps intended, and now is more emphatically stated. So I don't think there's much here for anyone to really disagree with or see a way to embellish. And I welcome Senator Lyons' observation of getting to simplicity on any complex issue. And I think we've tried to bring it to that place where this at least foundational piece is well established, and that, again, will serve us well, I think, to do the more complex work that's still in front of us.
Mr. Demaray.
Yes, hello,
How are you?
how are you?
Good, thanks. Jim, they, as you know, sent some language. I'm wondering if you might just take us through that a little bit in the memo and just raise any concerns or just walk us through exactly what it does.
Sure, yep. So, for the record, Jim Damery, Village Council. I'm looking at a memo from Chair Carroll to you, to your committee, dated April 16th of this year. It's proposing a revision to Title 16, Section 164, which deals with the state board's powers and duties. And what this does is, well, I'll read through it. It says the state board shall, and then it's a strikeout, which is the strikeout language is evaluate education policy proposals, including timely evaluation of policies presented by the governor and the secretary. That's being taken out. So it says the state board shall engage local school board members and the broader education community. And then the struck language that says and establish and advance education policy of the state of Vermont. So getting away from policy really here is, I think, the goal. So it reads down, the state board shall engage local school board members and the broader education community, and consistent with the provisions of this title, its own rules and rules adopted by the secretary, establish and regularly update a long-term strategic vision for the delivery of educational services in Vermont, advise the General Assembly, the Governor, and the Secretary of Education on high priority educational policies and issues as they arise, and act in accordance with legislative mandates, including the adoption of rules and executing special assignments. So I'm reading that language to say, getting out of the policy area, getting into more strategic vision areas and interface with the public. Then it goes on to revise some of the powers and duties. So number 4, which reads currently, review and comment on agency budget prepared by the secretary for the governor. That's being struck. And then subdivision 7, which deals with rulemaking. Now we read adopt rules to carry out the powers and duties of the board as directed by the General Assembly within the limits of legislative intent. So those are the changes, and from a legal standpoint, I see no issue with them.
And Mr. Demaray, is H122, is that in the House right now? Is that their bill that they're working on, or is that?
I'm not following that bill. I can try to find the status of it for you. But
That's right. I see it at the top of the testimony. Secretary French may know where that's where that lies at this point.
Which part, Mr. Chair?
You said AOE testimony H122, the role of the state board.
Yeah, that's, I think to Chair Carroll's point, that's how, when we were tasked to sort of come together on this last week, that was the vehicle and the trajectory that we
Yes.
were responding to.
Last year's bill.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. S-166 was last year's bill. But we were, I agree wholeheartedly with Chair Carroll. We're agnostic as to the vehicle
Sure.
for this. We were just responding to a request last week, and it was 122 that prompted us to all come together on this last week.
Great.
so S-122
H1,
is a government operations bill.
right.
It relates to boards and commissions, and it has been passed by the House.
That's right. So this is indeed language that I appreciate the tickler. It is something that is in government operations right now, Senate government operations. I don't believe she has voted it out, but she may have. So we can either attach it to the H122 through government operations in the Senate, or we can we have our vehicle ourselves. So, but either way, it looks like we're in good shape. Any other questions for our witnesses? Senator Lyons, please.
Just a quick question on number 5 is repealed. What is number 5? What
Well,
was it? What did it used to be?
That has been repealed for a while. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, so
A new repeal.
Great. Okay. Thank you both. Good afternoon. Shifting gears, we are pleased to welcome back our state colleges, Ms. Levasseur and Ms. Scott. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for jumping in early. Very much appreciate it. Senate Appropriations and the state colleges asked us to have a walkthrough of the requests being put forward. And so with that, we'll turn it over to the two of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having us back to Senate Education. For the record, I'm Catherine Levasseur, the Director of Governmental and External Affairs for the Vermont State Colleges. And with me is Sharon Scott, who is our Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer. We are here today to share the education scholarship and workforce development sections of the budget. These also appear in H159, as well as our unfunded our unfunded projects related to COVID-19. In terms of the scholarships and workforce development, we've had many conversations throughout the legislative session about the students that we serve, the communities we serve, and our role in workforce development and higher education in Vermont. We've listened carefully to legislators' ideas and have thought about how we can fit in proposals for free tuition, workforce development, and especially how we can make a college education more affordable to our students. The Critical Occupations proposal outlines investments for a successful future for our students, the state of Vermont, and the institution of the Vermont State Colleges system. In developing this proposal, we considered who our students are, what Vermont needs, and how we can fill these gaps successfully. There is a tremendous need for upskilling, reskilling, credentials, and degrees in Vermont's workforce, and we see ourselves as critical to closing that gap, which is why we are proposing the Critical Occupations programs. In addition to serving the affordability needs of our students, these programs balance ideas, these program ideas balance where they are taught, how they are taught, and the workforce development value to the state. These are investments that will strengthen us as we work through this transition through enrollment incentives, transfer student incentives, and adult learner incentives. Additionally, several of these programs will close equity gaps between students by providing internship stipends to those enrolled in high-need occupations. So the House included these proposals in H439, the budget bill. They did also put intent language in Section 10 of H159, the workforce development bill.
Our first project that we're proposing is a Welcome Home Scholarship. This scholarship is proposed for Vermonters transferring to Vermont State College institutions from out-of-state institutions, or those returning to school after exiting during the 2021 academic year. The program's mission is to incentivize students to come home to Vermont or to complete their degree if they left school without finishing during the 2020-2021 academic year.
Ms. Scott, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. Jeannie, would you mind sharing the screen with Ms. Levasseur? Thank you.
The scholarship would provide $5,000 per year or $2,500 per semester for full-time students, those enrolled in 12 or more credits, or $3,000 per year or $1,500 per semester for part-time students enrolled in 6 to 11 credits. The scholarships could cover tuition, room and board, and fees for students. We estimate we can serve 575 students with these scholarships for a total program cost of $4 million. We estimate that 20% of those students would be students who would not have attended a Vermont State College school without this opportunity. The second opportunity is a degree completion program. Recognizing the state's goal of 70% of adult Vermonters obtaining a credential of value by 2025, the degree completion program is targeted at Vermonters who have a gap in attendance of at least 2 years and those with at least 40 existing credits. The reason for this is that there is a high cost benefit calculation for an adult to return to school to complete a degree. Someone with 40 credits existing would either be able to achieve an associate's or get most of the way to a bachelor's with 30 credits paid for. We know from Advance Vermont's research that 65,000 more Vermont residents must possess a credential in the next 6 years in order for the state to reach the 70% goal. And we also know that according to the Lumina Foundation's Stronger Nation 2020 report, there are about 54,000 Vermonters with some college and no credential or degree. We estimate we can serve 200 Vermonters with this one-year scholarship for $3 million.
Next is the Critical Occupations Graduate Internship Scholarships. This scholarship program is designed to target graduate students in high-needs fields of study to the state of Vermont, but in the fields that tend to have lower pay for graduates, such as education and mental health counseling. These programs have an internship and practicum requirement that the students are not paid for, but the students must have the college credits to support the internship as well. Paying for the internship credits and providing hourly compensation to the students reduces barriers to access and incentivizes more students to pursue these critical occupations in the future. These proposed scholarships would support the graduate credits required for the internship or practicum up to 12, plus compensation of $15 per hour for up to 240 hours per semester. We believe we can serve approximately 100 current students at a program cost of $2 million. And like the Sister Graduate Internship Scholarship, we also propose a Critical Occupations Undergraduate Internship Scholarship. This program would provide hourly compensation for undergraduate students enrolled in critical occupations in the allied health and education programs. Compensating students for the hours worked reduces barriers to access and enables students to pursue their studies in these critical occupations. It also enables students who need income to support themselves and their families during school to draw that from the required internship work. The scholarship would provide $15 per hour for up to 240 hours per semester, and we believe we can serve approximately 300 students for a program cost of $1 million.
Our next program is free tuition for critical occupation careers. This proposal would provide last dollar tuition for students enrolled in specific critical occupation career programs for 1 year. We compiled a proposed list, including the McClure Best Bets that are essential to the state's workforce needs. These include a bookkeeping certificate, IT service desk specialist certificate, certified production technician, graphic design certificate, software and web development program, practical nursing, electrical and plumbing apprenticeships, childcare at both the associate's and bachelor's levels, allied health certificates, nursing programs, mental health counseling, paramedicine, dental hygiene, a certificate in accounting, small business management, radiologic sciences, and respiratory therapy. We estimate we can serve 500 students for a program cost of $5.5 million. This program would be available to those currently enrolled in these programs, as well as to new students. Our next project is the Workforce Development 2.0 proposal, and it's modeled on the successful CRF Workforce Initiative established by the legislature last fall. You may recall that the program enabled us to provide nearly 1,400 courses and trainings to 971 Vermonters whose employment was affected by the pandemic. In addition to the courses, we provided wraparound services like textbooks, transportation, technology, and childcare assistance. The 2.0 proposal doubles the number of students served to an estimated 2,000. We also capped the individual participation to 6 credits or 2 courses, and the estimated cost of this is $3 million. It's important to note that this program is found in H315, which is currently awaiting the governor's decision.
And finally, we have the long-term care facility practical nursing program. This program is outlined in the Healthcare Workforce Bill and was proposed by the Vermont Association of Hospitals and Health Systems to address the skilled nursing shortage in the state. The program is also outlined in the committee budget letters to appropriations. It's for $2 million to be appropriated to the Department of Health to establish a partnership program between skilled nursing facilities and Vermont Technical College that brings Vermont Tech's LPN program to the skilled nursing facilities to train current employees, such as nursing assistants, to become higher level providers. The funds cover the trainees' tuition and fees and provide a stipend to help meet their living costs, such as housing and childcare, while they are attending the program. The funds would also support Vermont Tech's instructional, program, and administrative costs. While additional nurses are needed in all practice settings, the need is especially great in Vermont's long-term care facilities, and LPNs serve a critical role in delivering care directly to the residents in these facilities. Helping existing employees, such as nursing assistants, become LPNs would enhance Vermont's healthcare workforce and advance these individuals' careers as well as their economic well-being. The program is estimated to serve 40 students, and like the Workforce 2.0 initiative, it's also important to note that this is found in 315, which is currently awaiting the governor's decision. We do know that there are many worthy programs and ideas that your committee and the Senate must consider as you are determining your budget recommendation, and we do hope you will support the critical occupations proposals as we seek to meet the needs of our students, the state, in their workforce and educational needs. And next, Sharon will walk us through the
Why
COVID project.
don't we pause there for a moment, if you would. So would you remind us and we have this on our laptops, just so you know, you don't need to bring it up. What exactly now is in 315? Would you refresh our memories?
Yes, in 315, there are 3 proposals that affect the Vermont State Colleges. The first is the practical nursing proposal.
Right.
The second is the Workforce 2.0. And then the third is the 2 free courses for high school graduates of the class of 2020 or 2021 at any Vermont State College institution.
Okay. Okay. Committee questions, Senator Lyons.
Yeah, I do. This looks like a nice distribution of resources for, depending on with the different professions. I don't see anything in here on laboratory science. And so just knowing how important it's going to be to encourage young people into the lab and doing lab testing. We've found that we've had a need during COVID. So I don't know whether that was a discussion or it's a discussion waiting to happen.
Good question. Ms. Scott or Ms. Levasseur?
In terms of the programs that were selected, we looked first at programs that were shorter in duration. While that one did not initially come to the forefront, it's certainly something that if the committee were interested in us adding that from a policy standpoint, that we'd be happy to do so.
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as it is quite intense given the, the academic piece and then the clinical work that goes on, but might be nice to consider it.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. Would one of you, Senator Hooker, please?
Thank you, Senator Campion. Thank you, ladies, women, for being here. And I'm looking at all of these, and these are great areas that certainly need attention. Are they ranked in any particular order? If you had to choose some of the, which ones would you choose as top of the list besides the ones that are already in 315?
That is not a question I've been asked before. So if you'll just give me a moment, let me just take a quick second to scan through. A couple of things come to mind for me, in addition to the ones that are already in 315, and we're incredibly grateful for that. The first one that comes to mind is a degree completion. We know that we have 54,000 Vermonters today who have some credits but no degree or credential. It's essential that those workers be upskilled and reskilled into the ability to be able to take on additional career functions and to be able to ladder themselves up, whether that's moving up into a higher career path within their own employer or moving out. It's helpful from a social services standpoint, but it's also vital to our workforce and economy. That probably to me comes as one of the first things that I would think of, what is going to offer some of the greatest value to the state. The next would be the Welcome Home Scholarships. Again, trying to get Vermonters who left the state for some reason to attend school out of state, trying to get them to return back to the state and become, Vermonters and really be there. What we know is that more than 2/3 of our graduates live and work in Vermont after graduation. So if we can get those students to return to us, we have a good, strong chance of helping them remain in the state after graduation.
I think one, if I may jump in briefly, but one thought with this list also to consider if the committee was considering ranking them would be around what are the committee's goals around higher education. And so this list was put forward after we solicited input from the 4 institutions. As you can see here, there are programs across all 4 institutions and also programs across every corner of the state that we touch. A consideration might be, I know that this committee has had conversations around free tuition. If that is an issue that rises to the top, perhaps that would be an area that the committee might consider prioritizing. I also know that there are conversations in the legislature at different points in time about internships and compensation and equity. And so there's both a graduate and an undergraduate internship opportunity put forward here. And to further to Sharon's thought about the Welcome Home Scholarships and the degree completion scholarships, the Welcome Home Scholarships also provide an incentive for students who left school in the last academic year to return to school. A lot of those students likely were, if you think about the demographic of students that we serve, a lot of those students who left school likely left for COVID-related reasons or family economic reasons. And so I believe there's a lot to consider depending on the committee's priorities around how you might rank these proposals.
Senator Lyons.
So I'm thinking about the specific programs, educational programs, and linking that with the outstanding needs that we currently have in the state. And if you do that, you come up with nursing at all levels. There's huge, absolutely huge need for nurses in our state. Thousands of nurses needed now. So that's one. I haven't heard the same compelling need for dental hygiene or plumbing and electricians. But the other very high rank and high need would be on social work, mental health, MSW, mental health, and significant needs there. So, and just as Senator Hooker and Senator Terenzini and I have been talking and hearing about and learning in health and welfare, those are the things that are so critical. Childcare, of course, yes, would come right below that. So those service jobs and service professions, I think, are absolutely critical in that order.
And just so I have the order right to report to the chair of approps, nursing, mental health,
childcare.
And childcare.
Senator Hooker, does that agree with your thinking as well, or would you add anything?
Well, there are a lot of them, Senator Lyons.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Nursing, mental health, and childcare we've certainly heard a lot about. But I do appreciate the degree completion program, in that it sounds to me as if this is something that can be affected more quickly than other areas, and so it, you know, that might have some benefit as well to help upskill people, or continue, you know, to have people get their degrees so that they can get into jobs that will pay them a higher wage, and also help the employers that are looking so frantically for help in the state.
I'm wondering if one of you might point us to, a couple of other things that, this committee has talked a lot about, teacher education, making certain we know that we have not heard testimony directly yet from the NEA. We've just got bogged down with other things, but one conversation I'm hoping to have this summer and then also next year is, how do we make this state the best state to teach in? And part of that, of course, is going to be connected to salary and reimbursements for student debt, and also teacher education, excellent, strong teacher education programs, but also ones that are affordable. And so I'm wondering if, at a quick glance, if you could point us to where that might be on this. I think you mentioned something about education.
Yes, so that is in both the graduate internship and undergraduate internship scholarships. Those would be available to students pursuing both their bachelor's and their master's degrees. And so the education programs come with a practicum requirement, and the students are not currently not paid for the hours worked, and there's often credits associated for the hours worked when they're doing a student teaching practicum in a school. And so the thought behind this program is to reduce barriers to access and to also provide students the stipend to cover their hours worked while they're enrolled in the education programs for up to 240 hours per semester.
So if I may, for a student who is at a high school or any school for the term, student teaching, or even if it's just a few weeks, these are the kinds of dollars that they could access.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And at the graduate level, getting to the mental health counseling and social work, but I know specifically for the mental health counseling program has a very large internship requirement, 750 hours plus 12 credits of internship. That particular scholarship would cover the cost of those credits, as well as compensate the individual if they weren't receiving compensation from the partner in organizations that they were taking the internship through. So as with education, we're looking for an opportunity to be able to make it easier for individuals to go into those fields by giving them some opportunities for being able to earn some wage during that period, or essentially a scholarship.
I may also just add that both the degree completion and the Welcome Home scholarships do not have programs proposed as attachments to them. And so those would also be available to students in the education field or in the mental health or social work field.
Senator Persler.
Thank you. I had a question on the free tuition program, which is the last dollar. How do last dollar programs work when they're up against another last dollar program? So like we have the VSAC 802 Opportunities, which is also a last dollar free tuition at CCV. So if somebody was in one of these, specific occupations at CCV, who gets to be the last dollar, you or VSAC?
That would need to be, from a procedural standpoint, something that we would work out the details on. What we do know from some of the programs is that there's a very clear financial component with the VSAC programs, which would likely require VSAC to be the last dollar out, because there would be ample financial aid that the individual would receive in terms of gift aid from the institution in advance. So whether that's Pell or SEOG or another form of gift aid. But procedurally, we would need to work out that detail with VSAC to make sure that there is no opportunity for a student to double dip.
Right, and as well, just would be good to know if, for this program, what the last dollar is, just because as we appropriate money, maybe it doesn't really matter in the big scheme because it comes out of the same pot eventually. But yeah, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, shall we move to COVID-related expenses? And Sharon, we have this on our iPad, so no need to bring it up.
Excellent. So we propose $23 million worth of projects in 3 primary categories. The first is spending related to highly flexible remote learning for a total of $7,750,000. And that includes things that range from loaner equipment for students to be able to use equipment. But more importantly, the 3 big areas within that are highly flexible classrooms. So a proposal for $2 million in there to take every classroom and make it highly flexible, meaning that a student could be face-to-face in the classroom or remotely learning synchronously in nearly every classroom that does not require a specific hands-on piece of technology like a CNC machine or a specific piece of equipment that would be in the classroom. That would be for $2 million. And that continues the work that was already started last fall related to the CRF monies that we were allocated last year. The second major portion of that is the network infrastructure that goes along with that. The Vermont State College's network infrastructure was installed in the early 2000s, and its backbone, so the hardware and software that operates our network infrastructure was created more than 13 years ago. In order for us to be able to move to a highly flexible, ubiquitous learning, learn anywhere environment, our network infrastructure does need to be upgraded. For the purposes of what we're doing right now, we can accommodate within what we have today. But were we to make every classroom remote enabled, where we could have students learning remotely and in the classroom simultaneously, we would need to increase that. And then the last major effort within that project grouping would be learning hubs. And a learning hub would be an area within a library or a community center or other location around the state that would offer technology-enabled spaces for students to be able to learn anywhere. We know that while there's significant investment going on in the state right now, we're getting broadband, there are many areas of our state for which it's very difficult to do what we're doing today. And so this would allow a remote learning hub that would allow individuals, students, or others to come together and be able to perform these exact same kinds of things from a separate location. And the proposal would be for the learning hubs for $1.75 million. The next category would be remote workforce development, and this would be for our employees and for our students. And the largest portion of those projects is the replacement of our existing enterprise resource planning software. That software was installed within our system between 1999 and 2002. It is highly customized to operate with what was formerly 5 colleges. In order for us to be able to administratively consolidate and be as efficient as possible, replacement of that ERP with a software as a service model, meaning less customization and more something that can be readily upgraded, would allow us to be able to move forward and with our administrative consolidations and be much more efficient. There are other smaller projects in there that I can go into detail on for you if you'd like, but that project is $5 million of the 5.75. And then the last component would be a tuition freeze. So last year in October, our Board of Trustees voted to freeze tuition for all Vermont State College students for the upcoming fiscal year. The cost of that freeze to the Vermont State Colleges is estimated at $3 million. And so the VSC proposes covering the cost of the tuition freeze with additional COVID dollars.
And that total amount, the tuition freeze is 3 million.
3 million.
So this basically is supporting, paying back in a way the costs that were lost when you froze tuition.
Yes,
Entirely or just partially?
It would fully cover the cost of freezing tuition. The board made a very conscious decision, recognizing that students were very much affected by COVID, students and their families, and that raising tuition in the midst of a pandemic was not going to be in students' best interest. If there was funding available, filling the cost of that tuition freeze would be beneficial to the VSC.
Senator Lyons.
So remind me, I'm sure we've been through this previously, but when the tuition freeze took place and the college was in hiatus, really going through the pandemic, what, if any, staffing changes were made? Would any of this money go to bringing staff back that might have been let go or put on a half-time or part-time?
We did not lay off any staff during the pandemic. We did have part-time faculty who some sections were cut. And so those faculty positions for part-time instructors might not have been filled if we didn't have enough students to fill the seats. But no faculty or staff were let go due to the pandemic.
Amazing.
It's through the very generous support of the legislature.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Ms. Lavasser, this might be a question for you. We have spent an awful lot of time in this committee on literacy. At some point, I would like to hear from, I suspect there are elementary education programs at Johnson, at Northern, as well as Castleton. If probably might start with just a conversation with me, but I'm sure the committee would also be interested at some point, if time permits. It's going to be tight, but maybe even a Monday afternoon. If I would like to hear from those, the chairs of those departments, to understand how literacy is being taught, and just get a sense from them what some of their needs might be. If you would reach out to them about their needs right away, that would be great, because again, with some of these dollars coming in and some of this committee's focus, as much as we can wrap around this goal, if you will, the better. So are there particular trainings that teachers in the program, young to be teachers or professors need, or what is it that, are there things in particular that our state colleges could use? If you could get back to the committee actually on that by Monday, that would be very, very helpful. Much appreciated. Committee, anything else? So before us, we really, and we have state colleges, UVM, the independents, VSAC. We're going to hear in a few minutes again from Tom Cheney, a little bit about, just a follow-up to his conversation that he started with us. These are largely the things before us that appropriations is working on. I'll talking with members of APPROPS tomorrow and a little bit throughout the weekend. If anybody has particular concerns, priorities, I certainly heard from the chair of Health and Welfare and her committee members that nurses, mental health, childcare. I'm going to ask, for this information on literacy. These are all things that I think this committee could certainly weigh in on. But if there are other things, if senators would take the time this weekend to look at those other proposals and either flag concerns or highlight priorities, I would welcome that. Senator Lyons.
Oh, I was thinking about our conversation yesterday on 246 and the
Yes.
need for staffing and on sort of the infrastructure, buildings, capital construction. So, and the more I think about it, the more I think that that staffing is quite essential, even though some of it's in the short term. So we can think about that.
That's a great point, and we're going to return to that and maybe even finish it if we can on Tuesday. We have an amendment from Senator Perchlik on that, and I'm meeting with Secretary French and Mr. Desmarais, I believe, Monday for a while. Anybody's welcome to join in on that if anybody's interested. We're just going to kind of hammer out where the agency is and where maybe the committee is, and come with a fresh draft on Tuesday. Anything else at this point for either Ms. Scott or Ms. Lavasser? If not, I think we're good. Great.
Thank you very much for having us
Thank
in
you.
again.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You as well.
Committee, Tom Cheney was scheduled for Monday, but given that we have a little time, I'd rather squeeze him in this afternoon. He's going to come in about at 2:15, so we can focus on other things next week and follow up his conversation with us. So why don't we come back in 5 minutes and have some time with Tom, and then we'll have some committee discussion and we'll wrap it for a day.
Did you really mean Monday?
Monday for me.
Okay.
Yeah, not for any. Not for
Phew,
anybody
thank
else.
heavens.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Just checking.
Jeannie, would you take us off for 5 minutes? It'd be great.
Yes, do you see that Mr. Cheney just joined the waiting room?
Terrific. He's welcome to jump in.